would you describe the current state of predictive analytics and recommendations, and how are you approaching those technologies at Shazam?
So at Shazam, we really like to take advantage of our massive data set. So we have more than 100 million monthly active users, and people Shazam more than 20 million times a day, and they're Shazamming all over the world. And why that's interesting from a data perspective is when someone takes their phone out of their pocket, unlocks it, finds the Shazam app and hits the big blue button, they're not just saying, I want to know the name of this song, they're saying, I like this song sufficiently to do that, and there's an amount of effort there that implies some level of liking. And so that's really interesting, because you combine that really interesting intention on the part of the user plus the massive data set, you can cut that in lots and lots of different ways. And we use it for lots of different things. At the most basic level, we're looking at what songs are going to be popular, and we can predict with a relative amount of accuracy what will hit the top 100 Billboard chart 33 days out roughly, and we can look at that in lots of different territories as well. But we can also look and see in the first few hours of a track whether a big track is going to go on to be successful. We can look at which particular part of the track is encouraging people to Shazam and what makes a popular hit. We know that, for example, for a big pop hit, you've got about 10 seconds to convince somebody to find the Shazam app and press that button. So there's lots of different ways that we can look at that data, going right into the details of a particular song, or zooming out worldwide, or looking in different territories, just due to that big worldwide and very, very engaged audience.
And you note in a talk that you take that usage data to create new product opportunities. What kinds of products are you creating, and what kinds of ideas do you have for future products?
So the way I think about it is that we can help people solve the problem that the paradox of all the choice that you get in digital music, it's never been as hard, I think, to find some stuff that you are really going to like. So again, we use that understanding about how what people mean when they hit that button, and use that data to give back to our customers to help them find music that they might like. From a really basic level, it just means charts, really. So charts for the worldwide, charts for different territories, and we cut the data in different ways and look into territories, and we send them to our customers, and they react really positively to that. But then we can cut that data by different genre, or cut it in different ways so that we can present it back to the customer in a way that will help them find new music that they're going to love.
So what kinds of challenges do you face in the product life cycle, and how, if at all, is the growing ubiquity of the Internet of Things affecting your approach and your process?
So I think it's the same for a lot of companies, which is, of all the many brilliant things that you could do, what are the right ones to do? And that's the problem that everybody faces, and it's a lovely problem to have. We're forever coming up with fantastic ideas, and the trick is to work out which ones have the most potential, and then working out how you can test whether they have potential, so that you can then decide whether you want to go into that deeper. Shazam is incredibly popular on iOS and Android, and we have a Windows app, and we're also on the web, so there's lots of different platforms that you have to make it on. And then the launch of the Apple Watch in the last few weeks means that we had to work out what that meant for Shazam. And it's not just a case of taking your big old app and shrinking it down to the size of a watch. You have to think about what's the use case, how we can make it really, really simple for people to use, but encourage and encourage our iOS users to use it more often, because it's on a very personal space, on your wrist, really, really convenient. And that's what we're thinking about when we're making that app. Another challenge is making an app for a device you've never seen. Right at the beginning, when you don't know what those things look like, you're trying to work out what's the best way to do it. And we worked incredibly hard to make it as useful and as simple as possible for that very, very simple use case.
And I'm curious to know how most users use Shazam. Like, what are they doing when they use Shazam? And are you seeing that behavior change at all, and why, if you are?
It's a really good question. There are different parts to it. So where people use Shazam, they use it largely in the home, but they also use it out and about in clubs and in bars. They use it in transport. They use it. Shazamming activity happens in cars as well, ideally by passengers. But there are two sort of major use cases, particularly in the music space, which is I've heard his song, I want to know what it is, hit the button, get a result. And then there is the other use case where you come back and look at your Shazams later on, and then we find that the people who come back and look at it, use it later on, behave in a very different way. They're much more likely to watch a video, to buy the track, to connect it to a streaming service, to look at the lyrics. There's a kind of really fast hit button result go type use case, and then there is the now I'm in an exploratory mode. The thing that we're focusing on a lot is how we get people to use the app outside the moment they've heard a song that they like but they don't know the name of. So you know, we have a news feed in our app now that uses the data that we know about what music people like to bring them stories about those artists, and or tell them when an album's been released, or tell them when there's a new video that's dropped by that artist, and that is working really well for us. And people they're using Shazam as a browsing experience and a discovery experience that's not completely connected to that very fast I want to know the name of this track.
Oh, that's interesting. And so shifting gears just a little bit, you went from working at the BBC to working at Shazam. What was that experience like, and how do the different companies compare in terms of the challenges you face and the technologies you use to solve those problems?
So at the BBC, I was working on, at the end of my career at the BBC, I was working on the Olympics. So that was creating a digital experience for the 2012 Olympic Games on tablet, mobile, connected television, and on the desktop. It was a huge project, took 2.5 years, employing hundreds of people in order to create a fantastic benchmark experience. It was an amazing opportunity, and I learned so much during the process of that in terms of working out what the right thing is to do, what the right things were to build, what emotions we'd be tapping into at the time of the games. And it was a huge privilege and very, very exciting thing to work on. And with a hugely concentrated 17 days of games right at the end, where everything had to work perfectly and spotlessly for the duration. So, and it was for a large company. The BBC is a big company, and and Shazam is by comparison a small company. So there are lots of differences there, just in terms of largely really around stakeholder management. How you get something done in a big corporation is very different to how you get something done in a small company. But what I've found really interesting since joining Shazam sort of 1.5 years ago is really how much of it is the same, because you're facing the same problems. It's it is how do you make a product that people are going to love and use, and that doesn't change. Customers don't change. They're still human beings who use products in different ways, and also working with a team to get people to do things is the same whether it's a big company or a small company. So it was really gratifying for me to see that all the skills that I've learned at the sort of the coalface of the Olympics in 2012 are eminently transferable to working in a technology-based startup. Elderly startup at 13 years, but a startup nonetheless. Those same skills are really helping me here at Shazam as well.
Nice. And so I want to close our conversation today with kind of a broad question. What people and projects are you following? What are you finding personally intriguing these days?
So there's two levels to that. There is the music space in which I work at the moment, which is around how solving that particular problem of millions of tracks to listen to, but which one should I engage with? There are interesting companies who are looking at data as well as Shazam. There's a startup from Ireland called Soundwave who's doing very interesting stuff around what music people are actually listening to. So looking at how other people use data to solve that particular problem. I don't think anyone has solved it in its entirety, and it's interesting to watch people solving it in different ways, and how that's coming together to help people find great music. On a much more personal level, what I'm finding interesting is the technology's ability to change your behaviour. So 2 or 3 years ago, all the buses in London all became connected, and you could tell when a bus was going to arrive at your bus stop. And it was interesting to me how it changed my behaviour. It went from just checking whether there was a bus coming, so I could run from my house to the bus stop and get on a bus, to all of a sudden becoming much lazier and waiting for that bus to arrive and go, well, I'm not going to leave the house for 11 minutes because it's not going to be there, and finding myself becoming lazier. Then, getting myself a Fitbit wristband, counting how many steps, and all of a sudden my behaviour's changed completely. I don't look at the bus timetable anymore because I'm desperate to get my steps up and achieve my target in the course of the day. And an old cynic, been in the business for a long time, I find it interesting that it can change my behaviour, but also how it changes people's behaviour in both negative and positive ways. And then again, as health apps and health and all these sorts of devices become much more ubiquitous, is again the data that those companies have on people's behaviour and how it changes from what they say they do to what they're actually doing is also really, really fascinating sort of data I'd love to get my hands on.
Well, thank you very much for talking with me today.
You're welcome.